There's a 55-year-old man who was born on May 5th, had been married 5 years, had 5 children, makes $55,555.55 a year, whose lucky number is 5. Gets a phone call from his friend. Friend informs him that the man that there's a horse named Lucky 5 will be running in the 5th race at the local track that evening. The man runs to the bank, withdraws $5,555 cash from his bank account, goes to the races and bets on Lucky 5 to win. And sure enough, the horse comes in 5th. Well, our life isn't lived by luck either, is it? Our life is lived from our consciousness. It's what we're carrying around in it that determines how our life is going to be lived. We all have that space within us, in our consciousness, the capacity for knowing, for loving, for sharing, for caring, and for doing. But just like a business that takes inventory every year, perhaps we have to take inventory once in a while just to see, what we're carrying around in our thoughts. What's my space filled with? What's in my consciousness? What's going in and what's coming out? What am I doing with what I have? Am I bringing new and am I discarding the old? Am I making space? And if I am, what am I making space for? Do I fill my time with what? Do I try to simplify perhaps my life? See, in order to make space for money to come in, I have to empty out this fear of lack. Make space for love to come in, maybe I have to empty out selfishness and maybe some low self-esteem. Make space for right and perfect work for me in my life. Maybe I have to empty out some self-doubt. Make space for joy to come in. Maybe I have to empty out some self-pity. Make space for my inner power to guide me. Maybe I have to empty out some of my long-held beliefs about my concept of God, as it being something outside of myself. Making space for the things in my life that I truly want to do. Things that satisfy me at a deep spiritual level rather than just at my ego level. It's knowing what gives my life meaning, purpose, creating the room and the energy to make it happen. But that's the freedom that I have within me. Sometimes you and I have to see the handwriting on the wall. I love this little poem called The Handwriting on the Wall. There's a weary mother returned from the store, lugging groceries through the kitchen door. Awaiting her arrival was her 8-year-old son, anxious to relate what his younger brother had done. While I was out playing and Dad was on a call, TJ took his crayons and wrote on the wall, "It's on that new paper you just hung in the den. I told him you'd be mad at having to do it again." Now she let out a moan and furrowed a brow. Where is that little brother right now? She emptied her arms and with a purposeful stride she marched to his closet where he had gone to hide. She called his full name as she entered his room. He trembled with fear. He knew that meant doom. For the next 10 minutes she ranted and raved about the expensive wallpaper and how she had saved. Lamenting all the work it would take to repair, she condemned his actions and total lack of care. The more she scolded, the madder she got, then stomped from his room, totally distraught. She headed for the den to confirm her fears. And when she saw the wall, her eyes flooded with tears. The message she read pierced her soul with a dart. It said, "I love Mommy," surrounded by a heart. Well, the wallpaper remained just as she found it, with an empty picture frame hung to surround it. A reminder to her, and indeed to all, take time to read the handwriting on the wall. Of course, we all have our habits or fears, those things that yak at us. eternally and internally, keep us from being in that silent space where we can hear that voice of our own true self. It's just clamor. It's just clutter. We call it subliminal static. Subliminal static. Fills our space. If we don't have a way to filter it, you see, to filter that static, we get so distracted we forget who and what we are. We forget our true self. It's not always the outside world that does it. At least it doesn't do it alone. No, the real culprit is my monkey mind. That's that little character, you see, that I have to deal with, and I turn too much of my power over to my ego. To my ego. You see, my monkey mind will do anything to keep me out of the present moment. It'll keep me infinitely entertained and occupied. It'll go over my past, it'll rehearse my future, whatever it takes to keep me out of this moment now. But when my real self does show up, my monkey mind shuts up, gives up its control. And my real self, being my individuality, in unity we call this part of ourselves our true self, the Christ self, that part of us that is God, that part that can never be separated from us, only in our consciousness. It's that part of us that is unchangeable. Deepak Chopra put this together one time. He said, the ego, however, is not who I really am. The ego is my self-image. It is my social mask. It is the role that I am playing. My social mask thrives on approval. It wants control. It is sustained by power because it lives in fear. Some metaphysical teachings say we have to destroy the ego to become enlightened, but I don't see that. I don't see my ego as an enemy to be destroyed. I see it as an ally to serve me, but not to run me. Ego is that personal characteristic of each of us that makes us independent from others, distinguishes us from others. It's our human self, that part of us that's changeable. It's our individual and collective thoughts. See, what we think about ourselves and everything else in the world and in our own little universe, we have within ourselves. And one of the questions then that arises many times, is the ego the source of our thoughts? Or are our thoughts generated elsewhere and pass through the ego? Is the ego the source of our thoughts? Or are our thoughts generated elsewhere and pass through the ego? Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, one of the great spiritual teachers, is going to answer that question for us.
Is the ego the source of our thoughts, or are our thoughts generated elsewhere and pass through the ego?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
There is no ego apart from the thoughts. The thoughts, identification with thoughts, is ego. But the thoughts that go through your mind, of course, are linked to the collective mind of the culture you live in, humanity as a whole. So they are not your thoughts as such, but you pick them up from the collective, most of them. And so you identify with thinking, and the identification with thinking becomes ego, which means simply that you believe in every thought that arises, and you derive your sense of who you are from what your mind is telling you of who you are. Opinions, viewpoints of that's me. That's some people talk to themselves and you are, oh, you are so good. Why doesn't the world recognize you? Or the mind says, you're no good. Same thing. You're no good at all. You fail at everything, don't you? Again, and then you believe in it. And then you suddenly have a low view of yourself. Why you have a low view? Because you believed in your thoughts. And why are you thinking those thoughts? Probably you picked them up somewhere, maybe in childhood. Maybe your mom was so stressed out that you said you're no good. And so you pick up certain thoughts and they get stuck in your head. Thoughts that you hear in childhood, they're little energy forms, like entities, and they get stuck in your head and don't refuse to go. They go. And the more you believe in it, the more more deeply lodged they become in your mind. And so some people are stuck with very hostile entities. I'm saying entity, not in some spooky way, but every thought is an energy form, and as such, we could call it an entity. And there are many people in this world who are stuck with hostile, life-denying, continuously critical and attacking entities that they carry in their head, and they believe that is who they are. And they are continuously attacking themselves. And if they are not attacking themselves, they attack others around them. Let me tell you who you are. Of course, what they're really saying is, let me tell you who I am. So they project the famous, the famous saying, we don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. Which means you look at reality through the screen of your thinking and your judgment, which is conditioned by the past. A dreadful prison to live in. It's like blinkers, worse than blinkers. It's like looking at reality through heavy veils. Ooh, it looks so dark here. Is that a human being or? So the identification with thinking, believing in your thoughts, having no space outside of the movement of thought. Again, here we come to the vital thing, lack of space inside. That is the unconscious condition, spiritually, completely unconscious. And then you are burdened with a heavy ego. You are the ego, which is not an entity apart from thought. It is thoughts that you have identified with. And the first moment of freedom comes when you realize that certain thoughts have been going through your head for years, perhaps, and that they are only thoughts, and that you are not the thought, you're the awareness. In my case, I became aware that I had a thought, for example, that started in childhood, one of many negative thoughts I had. Bad things always happen to me. Bad things always happen to me. And that was when I saw people around me, okay, they have got all these nice things, and always there would be bad things happening. And of course, your perception then becomes selective. When you have a thought like that, you notice much more, because in everybody's life, in daily life, things go wrong. You miss a bus. You get stuck in a traffic jam, or you lose some money. But yes, this is normal. But if you have the thought, bad things always happen to me, you're extremely aware of those things, and they confirm to you that the thought is correct. And this is the selective perception of reality through the screen of thinking. So the reality will confirm to you, and not only that, that thought or any thought of that kind actually attracts bad things, negative things. Or if you believe people are basically bad, and that's a deep-seated belief, and you don't realize it's only a thought in your head or a belief, not only would you single out where you observe unethical or bad behavior in others, you would, there it is. Not only that, you actually are much more likely to encounter people who manifest that kind of behavior because you attract it. And so that's just incredible how people create their world through that. So freedom comes from stepping out, encountering, first of all, a little bit of space inside you, presence. And then from there you realize certain thoughts as repetitive and just a thought. Bad things always happen to me. Oh, there it goes again. I thought that before. So that's to become free of ego means becoming free of thought, identification with thought. That's the end of the ego. It may reassert itself from time to time, but at least that's the awakening.
Eckhart Tolle has a book called Stillness Speaks. Of course, The Power Now, which is one of his maybe famous ones. And another one I have on my book, it's called A New Earth, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose. Great books, great books. But it's really a fact, isn't it, that we need our ego. We need our ego for a certain part of our reality. Negotiate through the day, to balance our checkbook, get to where we need to get on time, and do all those things that we depend on, and our ego tells us this is the way we have to live our life. But if I'm listening only to my ego, I get the impression that there can't be a higher intelligence or a power greater than myself that I can trust. Give up too much space and that monkey mind and my ego will clutter up my life so that I forget why I'm even in this earthly presence. So what am I filling the space of my life with? Am I using events and objects, people, or substances to enhance my connection with the present or distract myself from it? What voice do I hear from the TV that's on for several hours a day? Does it support me to be aware, or does it lull me deeper into my ego? Does it bring me into my reality, or does it take me away? I think about how much space in my life these hours represent, and then I ask myself, is this something I've really chosen or something I just allowed to happen? Have you noticed how the key themes around which so many TV and movies are structured? They're called the 3 V's: violence, victimization, and vengeance. Great entertainment for the ego. Doesn't do much for developing our own gifts, though, does it? Making our own unique contribution to the world. And when the ego is working all alone, it knows nothing of love. Give it complete free rein, and our monkey mind will clutter up our life with fear, leaving no space for love or for peace. Ego clutters us. And it does it through addictive substances, through anger, through judgment, through resentment, through hate, through greed, through jealousy. All these things that are blocks to our divinity. Ego knows that if and when we remember our life's purpose and we start listening to our higher self, we'll stop letting ego direct our life. So what do we have to do? Well, we can begin by learning how to recognize the difference between the voice of ego and the voice of our higher self. That monkey mind and God. When the voice of ego is trying to talk to us, it feels like something from the outside trying to get in. Oh, I'm not good enough. I can't do that. Yucky, yucky, yuck, yuck. But when a higher self is speaking, think about this. It's an experience of something deep within coming out. The gut feeling, isn't it? It's an intuitive moment. And then when we really listen, we can hear that voice of the higher self. It's usually one of quiet, maybe quiet excitement, focused in the here and now, peaceful, vibrant. Well, there's no reason you can't do that. You are good enough. You are good enough. And we feel the space in our heart start to open, don't we? Space of our mind open up. Space in our belly open up. We begin to feel that connection to all that is. Moments of grace, perhaps we can call it. Space opens and God comes through. Jesus was a master of parables. In Matthew 13:33, he tells us this. The kingdom of heaven is like leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of flour till it was all leavened. The meaning of this parable is just as a leaven is added to flour so that the bread will rise, truth added to our daily living will allow us to rise in consciousness, lighting our lives, bringing us into the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven being, of course, nothing but our consciousness, expanding in the awareness of God. And I just don't know any other way to begin experiencing God than by going into the stillness, into the silence, choosing to simply listen. Sure does shop that monkey mind, especially when I focus on God and I empty my mind. Or I'm doing chanting, or Tai Chi, or yoga. You and I need to ask ourselves, is there space in my life to hear the voice that tells me where my fear resides, reminds me of where my work is that I need to do? Is there space in my life to hear that voice that says I am loved? A voice that says I am enough. A voice that says I've been given everything I need to do that which is mine to do. If the space isn't there, I need to make it. I have all the tools to do it. If it seems to make sense for me to make space for plants or maybe animals or flowers or some kind of creativity in my life of some kind, maybe some new friends that I have to make, I need to do it. I need to do it. I have to insist on having beauty and laughter. Simplify and surround myself with the treasures, those things that I love. Get rid of those things I don't use anymore. All they're doing is taking up physical space, aren't they? Clutter in my room, clutter in my mind. Clutter in my room, clutter in my mind. And I start by creating space in my life in silence. Making space for God. And as God is love, making space for love in my life. God bless you. God bless you, Port St. Lucie.